Hey everybody, welcome to the fourth and final segment of a Supreme Court Regents review. Tony, Larry, and I, and Mr. Marshall, and probably everyone knows that Supreme Court cases are great. They're wonderful. They're fantabulous for thematic and DBQ essays. Alright, just a reminder, because I enjoy repeating myself, it's fun, go to Quizlet. Go and select that you want only one side. Look at all the words that I've added there, all the cases. Play a game or two. Add a little comment, maybe about your love for me and Supreme Court cases and Regents Review and flashcards, anything. All right, so since we're on our last segment, we've got a bunch to talk about. So we are going to talk about Supreme Court cases dealing with civil liberties. Now, here's the deal, folks. There's a difference between civil rights and civil liberties. Civil rights, usually what we're talking about is something dealing with like a specific group of people, like African Americans or women or Latinos. Civil liberties are the things that are granted to us in the Bill of Rights, like the right to bear arms, the right to freedom of speech, the right to an attorney, the right to not have cruel and unusual punishment. Those things are the things we consider civil liberties. All right, so let's get going here. Our first case is Shank versus the United States. And this is a case that took place during World War I, where you have a gentleman who was not in favor of the draft during World War I, and he was seen as obstructing the draft. So he's arrested, he's charged with violating the Sedition Act that was going on at the time, and he goes to jail. Now he says, hey, I have this awesome civil liberty, it's called freedom of speech, you may have seen it in the First Amendment, and it goes up to the Supreme Court. Now in this case, and this is a big one, this is great for multiple choice too, but even better for essays, it says, all right, listen, guy, yes, you have freedom of speech. We all have freedom of speech, but it's not absolute. You can't say anything at any time without consequences, especially if there's a clear and present danger. And the example that they give is like yelling fire in a crowded theater, that you would cause a panic. And so in this case, they say, no, your right to freedom of speech is not absolute. If you're going to hurt our ability to draft soldiers into the war effort, and we might not be able to have enough soldiers to protect our safety, of our country, then that's not good. And so they ruled against him and said, no, you're done, dude. Now, of course, I want to remind you, because I have a compulsion to, they like to link this with Lincoln suspending the writs of habeas corpus during the Civil War, and FDR and Japanese internment camps during World War II. It might be nice for you to link them as well. Oh my gosh, Koremitsu versus the United States. Who knew that that would come up? I did, because I made this PowerPoint. Anyway, so yeah, Koremitsu versus the United States. We already mentioned it previously when we were talking about civil rights, because this is a great case to talk about Japanese Americans, but it's also great to talk about, civil liberties being suspended. What ended up happening with these folks is they were rounded up in the western United States. If they had homes, if they had businesses, they lost them, and they were put in camps. And this case said, nope, that's fine, that's totally fine if we're doing it to protect our national security. And like I said previously, these guys got 20 grand for their troubles in the 1980s, 40 years after the fact. So thanks, U.S. government. Although thank you. Oh, thank you. Mapp versus Ohio. Now we're into some of my favorite cases, because they're my good friend. Who's the Chief Justice for these? Hang on. We only had to do 2 for the Regents. Earl Warren. What? You said Earl Warren? Oh my God, you're totally right. All right. So Mapp versus Ohio. This one's just a great one. I can only imagine being there. What the police were looking for, they were looking for a person relating to, I believe, a crime with a gun. They search the place. They find Ms. Mapp's salacious material, and they prosecute her for it. And, well, the problem was the search warrant didn't include salacious material. It included weapons. And so they said, no, you have to, if you're going to search for stuff, you need to, search for that stuff. You're not searching for any kind of illegal activity. Gideon versus Wainwright is another one that's linked in with Mapp and Miranda in terms of cases dealing with the rights of the accused. And in this case, the person had maybe gotten into a wee smite of a barroom brawl in Florida, and then couldn't afford an attorney when the civil case came out against him for the damages. And they said, whatever, sucks to be you. Well, that's not good, because if you're accused of a crime, you're entitled to an attorney, whether it's a criminal case or a civil case. And so that's what that case rules. Then we have Miranda versus Arizona. And Miranda versus Arizona says, listen, if you're going to be interviewing a potential suspect, they have to be made aware of their rights to not incriminate themselves from the Fifth Amendment, or as we know and love, the right to remain silent. They have to be made aware that they can have an attorney present, as we talked about here. And yeah, they need to know these things. So in this case where Mr. Miranda was charged, with rape and kidnapping, that was the issue. A case that came just before this is Escobedo versus Illinois, and it's the same idea that, you can't just hold somebody who, now in this case in Escobedo, he was actually asking for an attorney, but you can't just hold them and question them. The police can't do that. Especially if somebody is asking for a lawyer, you have to be made aware of your rights. And thus, we have the Miranda rights. All right, Engel versus Vitale. This case is about a student who was an atheist and found offense that basically in the schools that prayer was basically a part of the school day and led by school officials. And so the Supreme Court rules in this that no, you can't have school instituted prayer in a public school. Can you pray in school? Yes. It can't be led though by the teacher, by the administrator, at a football game, at a graduation. So if you want to pray before the Regents, go for it. Pray to whomever you would like for however long you'd like in whatever way you'd like. But it can't be led by us. I can't say, and now let us pray that you pass. Because you know what, honestly, we don't even need to pray that you're going to pass, because you watch this, you're going to do awesome. All right, next, Tinker versus Des Moines. This is during the Vietnam War, and so the student, she was suspended from school for wearing a black armband, basically in protest of the Vietnam War. And so this goes to the Supreme Court, and it says, listen, as long as you're not disruptive or harmful in your symbolic speech, that is allowed. Now, let's imagine she had a t-shirt or something with dead U.S. soldiers or dead Vietnamese children. No, that would not be allowed. But a black armband, which is just very symbolic, it's not actually showing anything that's going to harm the learning process, that's allowed. All right, now we move into the 70s, New York Times versus the United States. This deals with the Pentagon Papers with Nixon and the invasion of Cambodia. And he was, as you might imagine, unhappy for the information to be published. And what this said was, no, the press does have the right to publish classified information. Obviously, this is very controversial today, but it was said it was allowed under the First Amendment. And next you have Roe v. Wade. And this one also extremely controversial. But it says that that abortion was made legal under the right to privacy. I would be a little bit careful using this case, but you could use it not only for civil liberties, but you could also talk about it in terms of civil rights for women. All right, so we have our thematic essay. It says, identify 2 Supreme Court cases that have had an impact on civil liberties. Oh my gosh, that thing we're talking about. And for each case, you have to discuss the facts of the case. So listen, choose something that you actually know the facts of. Please don't choose like, well, Marbury versus Madison wouldn't fit for this, but don't use it anyway, because you'll never remember the facts. That's craziness. Identify a specific constitutional civil liberty that's addressed by the Supreme Court, and discuss how the decision of the Supreme Court either expanded or limited constitutional civil liberty. All right, so I went a little crazy here. And so the facts of the case for Shank. We've got Charles Shank. He distributed pamphlets protesting the draft during World War I. He's convicted for violating the Espionage Act of 1917. This case, the ruling upheld the Espionage Act. It said you don't have the First Amendment right to express freedom of speech against the draft, and it established that clear and present danger. Is that speech going to present a danger to our citizens? If it is, then it's not allowed. The civil liberty that's being discussed is the First Amendment, which is, in this case, freedom of speech. Well, did it expand or limit? Hopefully you've got limit. It's an example of expanding power during times of war, such as Lincoln. I don't know if I've mentioned this once or 500 times, but Lincoln suspending the writs of habeas corpus during the Civil War. You could even add along with that Koremitsu versus the United States, taking away personal property during World War II. All right, and our other case is Miranda versus Arizona. In this case, the background, the facts, Ernesto Miranda was arrested for raping and kidnapping a 17-year-old girl. And so what they said was statements from a defendant are admissible only if it can be shown that the defendant was informed of their right to an attorney before and during questioning, and the right against self-incrimination, basically saying you did it, saying you're guilty, prior to questioning by the police. Thus, we get the Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The civil liberties that we're dealing with here are the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and the Sixth Amendment right to an attorney. Did this expand or limit? Absolutely expanded. It's very controversial. A lot of people said that it actually hurt the police's ability to get criminals, to convict. It had a significant impact on law enforcement, and now it's part of the routine police procedure to make sure that they're informed of their rights. I maybe wouldn't mention Law and Order here, but yeah, it's common enough that we know it from TV. All right, guys, so this is the end of Supreme Court review. I don't know if I've mentioned 20,000 times, but go to Quizlet. It's fun. It's exciting. It's like a barrel of Supreme Court monkeys of fun. Okay, take care, study.